Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today I want to do a price analysis on the Rolex Explorer II. This would be the reference 226570, which is currently the modern reference, up through the end of September 2022. For those unfamiliar, the reference 226570 has replaced the reference 216570 back in 2021. It was unveiled around April of that year at Watches and Wonders. And visually, there were very few differences to this and the prior iteration, to the surprise, I suppose, of a lot of people who thought something more would be done with this watch given it was the 50th anniversary. But nonetheless, like many Rolex watches, it has seen quite a bit of price shift during the pandemic. But what's interesting about this watch versus many of the other models I have examined on price analysis is that it actually launched in the COVID-19 pandemic. So we don't have pre-pandemic numbers to compare to. So let's dive right in. Let me show you first a graph with a $0 y-axis, just so you can get an overall broad sense of the watch's performance, and you can see the way the line basically functions is much like we've seen pandemic-focused lines on other Rolex models. We see lower dollar amounts when we look at the start of the examination period. We see a significant spike during 2022's early months, and then a gradual decline since then. But the details are far more interesting, so let's zoom in this graph. I'm now changing the y-axis to $9,000 as the floor so we can better see the peaks and valleys of the analysis. While this version of the Explorer II was unveiled in the early months of 2021, I don't actually have Chrono 24 secondhand unworn data until July. So we're going to start the examination period as of July 2021, where the market average price for a secondhand but unworn Rolex Explorer II 226570 was $12,115. Note that this is higher than the retail price, but this wasn't even the retail price back then. We'll touch on that here in a moment. You can see that the line started to move up, and during the very start of 2022, I want to pull out another piece, which was referring back to that retail price change. So Rolex increased its prices at the start of 2022. On the steel sports models in particular, the price went up significantly for a number of them. This was no exception. This saw roughly a retail price increase of 10.6%. Just how much it went up really depends on which currency you're examining, but 10.6% is a reasonable number to use as sort of a baseline. So that is approximately the amount that all countries saw in terms of the retail change, which is in the US now, thanks to that increase, $9,500. So moving forward a few more months, we saw what happened with a lot of Rolex models, and that is a significant spike in the pricing as the early months of 2022 rolled on. In this watch's case, April 2022 was the peak price at $14,210. This is a bit different than a number of other Rolexes I've looked at where March was often the peak month, so a month later, but nonetheless still in that same general time frame. Since then, by and large, the watch has fallen in pricing. In fact, it has fallen every single month until September 2022. So pulling that out, you can see September's price of $13,460. This is approximately $100 more than what we saw the average price in August of 2022, which was $13,349. So overall, what does this all mean? We're talking about a watch with a $9,500 retail price. It began its initial trading on the secondhand market at around $12,100. The price surged in the early months of 2022, reaching $14,210 as its peak price, and now has fallen about $800 since then. The current price is about 5% lower than what we saw at peak, so in April of 2022. It's still, though, 11% above where the price was at the start of this examination period, which essentially, as I've noted, is the beginning of the rapid movement of them on the used market. And this current price is still about 42% above what the watch trades for at retail, should you be able to get it from an authorized dealer. So what does this all mean for the Rolex Explorer II, reference 226570? What I think this shows compared to a lot of the other Rolexes that I've examined before is this one's a little tougher to suss out. And I say that because its price performance has never been really all that dramatic. Yes, it trades above retail on the used market, which is true for essentially any steel sports Rolex at this point. We're not examining back to the 216570, but it is a very similar watch visually to this current model. So, of course, that may come into play a little bit on why the pricing may not be changing all that much, really. But compared to a number of other Rolexes, we're really looking at a watch that's sort of hovered around just a $2,000 range, which in the grand scheme of Rolex is not very much in the way of spikes and dips. It's just not a hype watch, which isn't surprising. The Rolex Explorer II historically was a pretty unpopular sports model from Rolex, a watch that once upon a time traded for quite a bit less than it did retail when it came to secondhand. Nonetheless, it has benefited from the demand for Rolex, as all Rolex models seem to, and so I would normally expect this to still kind of tend to dwindle down more and more, as we've seen with a number of other Rolexes, especially given the state of the international economy. Except, I am given pause because the September 2022 average is more than it was in August, and that's not something we've typically been seeing out of Rolex watches on Chrono 24. Could this just be a one-off blip? It is a change of only about $100. Sure, maybe, but it could also mean that the pricing is already sort of stabilizing on this less than popular watch. I really wish I had a couple more months out to do a better read on it, but, we're just guessing here. So in that regard, I'm going to say I think this watch is probably at stabilization point. I think the only things that will dramatically change it are if we see another significant retail price increase from Rolex, then I would expect that to be reflected by a similar percentage on the secondhand market. And alternatively, if we see recessionary factors increase and the economy actually decline in terms of the equities market, I do think that the price could dip more then as people feel compelled to unload watches to free up cash. So those are really the only two things I think would dramatically make a difference at this point. And otherwise, I think this line's going to stay relatively flat like it has been really over the last few months. But anyway, that's it for this price analysis video. Please give the video a like if you thought it was interesting. If you have any thoughts on this watch in particular, about the pricing or just about the watch itself, leave a comment below. And if you want to be notified when I have new videos, just click the subscribe button. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a really good day.